You were born into a royal line of the Vembu people, but not into wealth. The hut you first know is round and thatched, the air filled with the earthy scent of burning wood and maize porridge. The Transkei landscape is your first teacher. Its vastness shows you both beauty and limitation. Your father, Gadla Henry Mfakanyaswa, is a local chief who loses his position when he refuses to obey a white magistrate. The family moves to Qunu, a greener village where you spend your days herding sheep and calves. It is a quiet childhood, but not an easy one. Shoes are rare, and your playground is the dry riverbed that turns to a stream when it rains. You learn to run barefoot over stones without wincing, to listen more than speak, and to understand that leadership begins with patience. Your mother, Nozakini, is a soft presence, deeply spiritual, guiding you toward both tradition and kindness. In the evenings you sit by the fire while elders tell stories of heroes who fought wars for justice long before your time. You don't know it yet, but those stories will live in your bones. When your father dies, you are only 9 years old. It feels like the world has cracked open, but your life takes a new turn when you are sent to live with Chief Jongantaba Delinjabo, the acting regent of the Dembu people. The chief raises you like one of his own sons in the great place at Meke. Here the air is filled with talk of governance, disputes, and tradition. You sit quietly among grown men, absorbing how power moves in silence. It is here that you first see how decisions can shape lives, and how fairness can be fragile. Historians still argue whether the regent saw leadership potential in you from the beginning or simply took you in out of duty. What's certain is that your time in his home changes the rhythm of your life. You attend a Methodist mission school, where the teacher, following custom, gives you an English name, Nelson. You don't understand why your Xhosa name isn't good enough, but you are too polite to question it aloud. You wear your first Western clothes, a short pair of khaki trousers and a shirt too big for your small frame. You sit in class learning English, history, and Bible stories, and you start to see how education can be both a bridge and a weapon. The missionary teachers speak about obedience and humility, but they also open a door to ideas that will later help you fight for justice. A lesser-known story from this time tells of how you used to race your friends down the hillside after school, laughing until you tumbled into the grass. You were competitive, even then, never content to lose easily. But behind your laughter, something quiet begins to grow. You start to wonder why white men have land and power while your people serve as laborers on it. The unfairness of the world begins to show itself like cracks in a wall. At age 16, you take part in a traditional Xhosa initiation ceremony, a rite of passage marking the shift from boyhood to manhood. You remember the morning air, cool and sharp, and the circle of young men around you, all waiting for the symbolic cut that transforms your identity. The elders teach you endurance, dignity, and the expectation that a man must one day stand up for his people. It is painful, but you do not flinch. The songs and chants echo across the valley, and for the first time, you feel connected to something larger than yourself. As you grow older, you attend Clarkberry Boarding Institute, then Helltown College, where you live among students from across the region. You wear a stiff uniform and learn discipline. The world starts to widen. You read books about British kings and African chiefs, and you realize how differently their stories are told. You sense that power isn't always about who is right, but about who writes the story. One day you hear a rumor that the regent has arranged marriages for both you and his biological son, Justice. The idea of being married off without choice feels like a cage, so, in 1941, you and Justice run away to Johannesburg. You step off the train into a city that hums with life and danger, dust and smoke rising from the mines. You are 22 years old, dressed in old clothes, carrying little more than hope and a restless heart. Historians still debate what drove you more, the wish for freedom or the fear of being trapped by tradition. Maybe it was both. What's certain is that the boy who once chased cattle through Qunu's green fields has now stepped into a city that will test everything he has learned. The path ahead will be steep, filled with heartbreak and courage, but for now, you simply take a breath, look up at the strange skyline, and start walking toward your destiny. You find yourself in Johannesburg, a city that never truly sleeps. The streets buzz with the noise of trams, horse carts, and men in dusty suits carrying lunch tins. The scent of coal lingers in the air, mixed with something sharp and metallic from the nearby gold mines. It's the 1940s, and Johannesburg is both promise and prison. An industrial heart pumping wealth toward the few and exhaustion toward the many. You start out humbly. You find work as a night watchman, then as a clerk. It's difficult. You sleep in small rooms shared with strangers, eating plain bread and tea when you can afford it. But beneath the struggle, you feel something awakening inside you, an energy that will not fade. Your cousin introduces you to Walter Sisulu, a real estate agent with a steady gaze and a sense of quiet strength. He becomes your friend, then your brother in purpose. Through him, you meet other young Africans who share the same question that has been growing in your mind since you left home. Why must one race bow to another? Historians still argue about whether it was Sisulu or the city itself that turned your thoughts fully toward politics. But what matters is that this new circle gives your restlessness a name: justice. You meet Anton Lembede, the fierce founder of the ANC Youth League, whose words crackle like fire. He believes the future belongs to those who refuse to wait politely for freedom. His passion stirs something deep in you. During this time, you study law at the University of Fort Hare, though your stay is cut short after a student protest gets you expelled. It's the first time you publicly defy authority. You feel fear, but also a strange peace. You realize that sometimes, standing up means standing alone. You later finish your degree through correspondence while working at a law firm. The days are long, the nights are longer, but each page you read sharpens your understanding of power. There's a story people love to tell from these early days, that you once walked miles through the city, searching for an affordable coat, only to realize you didn't need it as much as someone else did. You gave it away. Whether or not it happened exactly like that, the truth behind it feels right. You were never one to hold on to comfort when others had none. You work at a firm run by white lawyers sympathetic to the African cause. You watch how cases are argued, how documents can shift a man's fate. You decide to become an attorney yourself. It feels almost rebellious, an African man using the laws of an oppressive system to challenge that very system. You and your friend Oliver Tambo eventually open your own law practice, the first black-owned firm in South Africa. The small office on Fox Street becomes a lifeline for those crushed by apartheid's laws, workers unfairly dismissed, families evicted, men arrested for not carrying passports. You charge little, sometimes nothing at all. People line up outside, their faces tired but hopeful. Inside, you work until your eyes ache, writing, reading, listening. You grow in confidence. You wear well-tailored suits, your posture straight, your eyes steady. But there's warmth in your smile. People trust you not just because you are clever, but because you listen. Even then, you know leadership is built not on noise, but on understanding. You fall in love too. You marry Evelyn Mays, a nurse with calm eyes and quiet strength. You start a family, moving between duty and love, between the fight for justice and the dream of peace at home. But the struggle always finds a way to your doorstep. The government's laws tighten like rope, passbooks, segregated buses, and restricted movement, each rule cutting deeper into your people's dignity. Historians still debate how much this period tested your faith. Some say you were pulled between personal happiness and a cause that demanded all of you. Others think you never had the luxury to choose. Either way, your marriage begins to strain under the weight of your growing political life. Then comes 1948, the year the National Party rises to power and formalizes apartheid. It is no longer just discrimination. It is now written law, a nation divided by skin. You feel the anger and despair spreading through townships like wildfire. But anger alone cannot win freedom. Strategy will. You and your comrades in the Youth League pushed the African National Congress to act more boldly. You helped draft the program of action, calling for strikes, boycotts, and civil disobedience. For the first time, you feel the movement gaining momentum. The streets hum with protest songs, voices rising against the iron weight of the regime. A small but telling moment stays with you. Once, during a march, a young boy handed you a piece of bread. He didn't say anything, just smiled. You were hungry that day, exhausted from walking and speaking for hours. That bread tasted like the purest kindness. It reminded you why you were fighting, not for power, but for the simple dignity of being seen. You begin to read deeply about resistance movements around the world, India, America, even ancient rebellions. You learn that no empire is forever. You start to see yourself not just as a lawyer or activist, but as part of a greater story. Still, every victory feels fragile. The police watch you closely. Files with your name multiply in government offices. Friends whisper about spies. You grow used to glancing over your shoulder when you walk home at night, yet your resolve hardens. You tell yourself that fear is not an excuse to stop. By the end of the decade, Johannesburg no longer feels like just a city. It's a living battlefield of ideas, filled with smoke, struggle, and the hum of change. And in the middle of it, you stand quietly, knowing that the life you once imagined, peaceful, private, safe, is already gone. The boy from Qunu has vanished, and in his place stands a man who cannot look away from injustice. You wake before sunrise most days now, the city still half asleep around you. Johannesburg's chill creeps through the thin curtains of your small home, and the distant hum of buses begins to rise. You stand at the window for a moment, thinking about how far you've come since those barefoot days in Qunu. You are a lawyer, a husband, a father, but more than that, you are now part of something bigger, something dangerous, something that feels impossible to stop. The early 1950s are years of growing tension. The apartheid system spreads through every layer of daily life. Separate benches, schools, hospitals, even entrances to post offices. You see signs reading Europeans only and non-Europeans nailed to walls like silent insults. Each sign feels like a slap, and you know millions of others feel the same sting. With your comrades in the African National Congress, you begin to organize campaigns of civil disobedience. The Defiance Campaign of 1952 becomes your first great test. People deliberately break unjust laws, entering whites-only zones, refusing to carry passes, walking through forbidden doors. You watch ordinary men and women, teachers and shopkeepers, choose prison over silence. It moves you deeply. You feel a strange calm, almost spiritual, when you stand among them. Historians still argue about whether you were always certain that non-violent protests could succeed. Some say you admired Gandhi's methods but doubted they could survive in a country as brutal as South Africa. Others believe you never lost faith in peaceful resistance until much later. Whatever the truth, this is the period when your ideas begin to sharpen. You start to believe that freedom might demand more than patience. Your speeches become fire. You stand on wooden crates in crowded townships, your voice rising over the dust and noise. We are not asking for pity, you say. We are demanding our rights. Crowds cheer until their voices blend into a single wave of sound. It feels intoxicating, hope carried on the air. But power always listens when it feels threatened. You are arrested for the first time. The cell is small. The smell of sweat and damp concrete thick in the air. You spend nights staring at the narrow strip of light from the barred window. Yet even here, you find clarity. Fear is no longer the enemy. Despair is. You decide you will never give despair the satisfaction of winning. When you are released, you throw yourself back into work. You travel from city to city, meeting with trade unions, students and teachers, helping them understand their rights. The ANC grows stronger, but so does the government's crackdown. The Suppression of Communism Act gives the police permission to arrest almost anyone they wish. You learn to live carefully, to speak carefully, to trust carefully. At home, life grows harder. Your marriage with Evelyn begins to unravel under the pressure of constant political engagement. She wants a quiet life, and you understand that, but quietness has become impossible for you. Eventually, the distance becomes too wide. You separate. You are left with guilt, but also a strange sense of acceptance. Sacrifice, you realize, isn't only about prison cells. It's also about the people you lose along the way. Then, one day in 1952, something unexpected happens. The ANC bans you from attending gatherings. The government issues a banning order that forbids you from speaking publicly, leaving Johannesburg, or meeting more than one person at a time. You are silenced on paper, but you find ways around it. You write letters, you send messages through friends, you meet secretly in homes and offices. You learn that leadership is not always about being seen, it's often about being steadfast in the shadows. There's a lesser-known story from these days. Once well banned, you disguised yourself as a chauffeur to attend a secret meeting. You wore a cap low over your eyes, carrying a rag in your hand like any driver waiting for orders. You stood by a car for hours, watching police move past without noticing you. Later, in the quiet of the night, you smiled at the absurdity of it all. How freedom sometimes depends on the smallest acts of disguise. The Defiance campaign, though met with arrests and beatings, achieved something extraordinary. It unites people. Black, Indian, colored and white activists begin to stand together under one cause. You see glimpses of the South Africa that could be, a place where solidarity matters more than skin. That dream keeps you going. In 1955, you help organize one of the most daring political gatherings in South African history, the Congress of the People. Held in Cape Town, thousands gather in a dusty field to adopt the Freedom Charter, a document declaring that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. You watch as delegates read its lines aloud, voices trembling with hope. The words sink into your heart like sunlight: equality, freedom, justice. You know you are witnessing history. Historians still debate who wrote each part of that charter. Some say you were one of the main authors. Others believe your role was more strategic than literary. But everyone agrees the moment marked a turning point. The government saw the gathering as treason. You knew what was coming. A year later, police arrive at dawn. They arrest 156 activists, including you, charging all of you with high treason. The trial drags on for years. You spend endless hours in courtrooms, listening to lawyers read accusations that twist your words into threats. The evidence piles up, but it's weak. The judges seem unsure. Through it all, you sit calmly, your hands folded, your eyes steady. You learn patience the hard way. Outside the courtroom, your life continues to shift. In 1958, you marry Winnie Madikizela, a social worker whose spirit matches your own. She is fierce, beautiful, unafraid of anyone. You find comfort in her courage. Together you have 2 daughters, but even as joy returns to your home, you both know it will not last forever. The struggle consumes everything it touches. By 1961, the treason trial ends with all defendants acquitted. You are free, but South Africa is more divided than ever. Protests grow louder, the government grows crueler. Police opened fire on unarmed demonstrators in Sharpeville, killing 69 people. The images shake you to the core. You stand at the edge of a decision that will define the rest of your life. As you look out over the city that night, its lights flickering like dying stars, you feel the quiet shift inside you. The time for peaceful protests may be ending. Something new, something far more dangerous, is about to begin. The night air in Johannesburg feels heavier now. You walk the streets with a hat pulled low, glancing behind you more than once. Every conversation carries weight. Every face might be a spy. The Sharpeville massacre has changed everything. The images of bodies lying on the ground, of mothers crying over their sons. have stripped away any last belief that the government will listen to reason. You sit in silence that night, staring at the papers, and something inside you hardens. You decide that peaceful protest, on its own, will not be enough. Together with a small group of trusted comrades, you form a new branch of the movement, Umkhonto we Sizwe, the spear of the nation. Its purpose is not to kill, but to sabotage, to strike at symbols of oppression, not people, power lines, empty government offices, military depots. You believe that controlled resistance might open a path to negotiation. Historians still argue about the moment you crossed that line, from peaceful protester to underground revolutionary. Some say it was an act of despair, others call it a calculated evolution. But in your heart it never felt like a choice. It felt like an obligation, born from seeing too much blood spilled for nothing. Life changes overnight. You can no longer move freely. The police are hunting you, your face printed in newspapers, your name whispered in government offices. You live under constant disguise, wearing overalls, driving from town to town, sleeping in safe houses, and hiding in trunks of cars. People start calling you the Black Pimpernel, a man who vanishes just as the authorities close in. There's a lesser-known story from this time. One night, while hiding in a farmhouse, you helped a child with his schoolwork. The boy had no idea who you were. You sat at the table under a dim lamp, explaining arithmetic while your comrades slept nearby with guns close at hand. Even in hiding, you carried the habits of a teacher, a father, a man who believed in growth. In 1961, you secretly attend the All in Africa conference, where leaders call for a national strike to demand a democratic constitution. The government responds with raids and arrests. You begin to see that the struggle is not just about politics anymore, it's about survival. The following year, in 1962, you leave the country for the first time. Using a false passport, you travel across Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt, Algeria, meeting leaders of newly independent nations. You train in guerrilla tactics, learning how to build discipline in movements that mix hope and fear. You speak at conferences, calling for unity and solidarity among Africans. For a brief moment, you feel the strength of a continent rising from the ashes of colonialism. But your time abroad is short. When you return to South Africa later that year, the police are waiting. They stop your car on a quiet road near Howick, arresting you on charges of leaving the country illegally and inciting strikes. You are sentenced to 5 years in prison. Prison life begins in Pretoria, and you quickly understand that time here moves differently. The walls are grey, the food bland, the guards cold. Yet even within confinement, you refuse to bend. You read, you exercise, you study the enemy's laws as if preparing for an exam. You once said that a good head and a good heart are a strong combination, and even in chains, you try to keep both strong. Historians still debate whether the government planned your capture through betrayal or luck. Some suggest a CIA tip led to your arrest. Others believe it was the work of local informants. Whatever the truth, your imprisonment doesn't stop the movement. It spreads your name like wildfire. The man the authorities hope to silence becomes the symbol they can't erase. Then, while you are serving your sentence, another blow comes. In 1963, the police raid a farmhouse in Rivonia, uncovering documents that link you and your comrades to sabotage operations. You are already behind bars, but now you are named among the key conspirators. You are transferred to stand trial with others in what becomes known as the Rivonia trial. The trial begins in 1963, and the courtroom feels more like a stage. Journalists fill the seats, the world watches. The charges are severe: sabotage, conspiracy, even treason. You face the death penalty. Yet when it's your turn to speak, you stand tall, your voice calm. During my lifetime, you say, I have dedicated myself to the struggle of the African people. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Those words echo far beyond the courtroom. People in cities you have never seen whisper your name. Students write it on walls. Protesters carry it on banners. The government meant to destroy you, but instead, they turn you into an icon. There's a quiet moment after your speech that few remember. A guard handing you a cup of water, his hands trembling slightly. He doesn't look you in the eye, but you sense something shift in the air, a flicker of respect or fear, or both. Even in that cold room, humanity refuses to disappear entirely. In 1964, the sentence is announced. Life imprisonment. You do not flinch. You shake hands with your comrades. The sound of the gavel fades behind you as you are led away, knowing that this chapter of your life, the one of movement, speeches, and city lights, is closing. Ahead lies another, darker chapter, one that will test your spirit more than anything before. You are loaded onto a small plane, handcuffed, the engines roaring louder than your thoughts. The guards say you are going to Robben Island, a place surrounded by cold ocean and sharper isolation. You look through the small window as the coastline fades, the land you love slipping away under clouds. You tell yourself that they can cage your body, but not your hope. You take one slow breath, steady and sure, and whisper silently. This is not the end, it is just another beginning. The air hits you the moment you step off the boat, sharp, salty, and cold. Robben Island sits like a stone in the sea, about 7 kilometers from Cape Town, and it feels as if the world has shrunk to its hard edges. The guards bark orders as you walk in chains with your fellow prisoners. The walls of the prison rise grey and unwelcoming. You are led down a corridor lined with iron bars, the sound of boots echoing off concrete, until you reach your cell. It is small, barely enough space to stretch out. There's a bucket in the corner, a thin blanket on the floor, and no bed. This is where you will live for years. You touch the rough stone wall, breathe in the cold air, and decide that you will not be broken. You have seen men lose themselves in smaller battles, but you know that this one will be longer, quieter, and more dangerous. You make a promise to yourself to survive and to remain human. The routine begins early every morning. At dawn, guards unlock the doors, shouting in Afrikaans. You are ordered to line up, receive a small portion of porridge, then march to the limestone quarry. The sun burns down as you work with pick and shovel, dust coating your lungs and eyes until everything glows white. Your back aches, your hands bleed, but you keep going. You learn to find rhythm in hardship. Historians still argue whether the guards understood what kind of men they were holding. Some say they tried to break you through humiliation, others that they eventually came to respect you. But what's certain is that the prisoners built their own quiet world within those walls. You taught one another, shared food, whispered lessons through the bars. You called it the University of Robben Island. At night, you study by faint light, reading history, law, and philosophy. You quote Shakespeare and Tolstoy from memory, trading passages like treasure. Sometimes, you hum old songs from your childhood to drown out the silence. The guards confiscate your letters, limit your visits, yet you cling to every word from the outside world. Each envelope feels like sunlight sneaking through cracks in the wall. There's a little-known story about how you once helped a young guard study for his exams. He was nervous, unsure of himself, and you guided him through the lessons with patience. Years later, that same man spoke publicly about the kindness you showed him, saying it changed how he saw the prisoners. It's strange how compassion can slip past even the thickest walls. Winnie visits you when she can, though it's never often enough. The meetings happen through thick glass, voices distorted by the small metal phone. You can't touch her hand, can't hug your daughters. Sometimes you smile just to hide how much it hurts. The girls grow up without you. You measure their lives through letters, first school, birthdays, small drawings folded in envelopes. You trace their handwriting with your fingers, memorizing every loop and line. The guards try to erase your sense of time. They take your watch, your calendar, even your sense of days. But the seasons still speak. You learn to count winters by the bite of the wind, summers by the brightness of the sea. You and your comrades develop small ways to stay sane, jokes whispered at mealtime, chess games played with pieces made from bread, debates about politics and poetry. You begin to understand that strength isn't loud, it's quiet persistence. In 1970, after 6 years of this life, you are transferred to a slightly larger cell, allowed to write 1 letter every 6 months and receive 2 visits a year. You use every word carefully, filling the small paper with meaning. The authorities censored them, blacking out lines they deemed too political. But even the fragments carry hope. Historians still debate what sustained you the most: faith, pride, or sheer will. You once said it was a combination of all three, but mostly discipline. You refused to let hatred take root in your heart. Resentment, you said, is like drinking poison and hoping it will kill your enemies. Those words would later circle the world, but they were born in this cold cell, on this lonely island. Over time, the outside world begins to change. In the 1970s, student uprisings shake South Africa, most notably in South. Young people shout your name in chants, though many of them have never seen your face. You are a ghost to them, but also a symbol of defiance. The government bans your image, your words, your photograph. But nothing spreads faster than silence filled with meaning. Once, during a storm, you watch lightning strike the sea beyond the prison walls. For a moment, the sky glows electric blue, illuminating the island in sharp detail. You think about freedom, not as a place, but as a state of mind. Even here, you tell yourself, you can still be free. Then comes a rare act of defiance from within. Prisoners refuse to work after a comrade collapses in the quarry. You are punished. No visitors, no letters, but the protest succeeds. The authorities begin to realize that you are not just prisoners. You are organized, resilient, united. In the early 1980s, small changes begin to ripple through the world. International pressure mounts. Governments and celebrities call for your release. Posters of your name appear in cities from London to New York. Songs are written about you, and though you hear about it only in fragments, you know something has shifted. There's another story from this period, almost forgotten now, a seagull that used to visit your courtyard each morning. You would toss it crumbs from your breakfast bread, and it would wait patiently, head tilted. The guards laughed, but you found comfort in its visits. To you, the bird was proof that not everything beyond the wall was unreachable. By 1982, after nearly 2 decades on Robben Island, you and several senior prisoners are transferred to Pollsmoor Prison on the mainland. The cells are cleaner, but the isolation is deeper. Yet even here, you feel the wind changing. You start to hear whispers of reform, of meetings, of negotiations that might one day lead to something unthinkable. Freedom. You turned 54 that year, hair graying, back stiff from years of hard labor, but your eyes still hold the same fire. You've been silenced for 2 decades, yet your voice echoes louder than ever. You close your eyes at night and imagine your homeland, the red soil of Qunu, the laughter of children, the hum of freedom waiting to be born. You know that your story isn't over. It's only paused, like the tide before it turns. Polesmore is different. Gone are the limestone quarries and the open winds of Robben Island. Here the air feels heavy, thick with the weight of bureaucracy and the sound of gates sliding shut with precision. You are kept in a small cell again, though cleaner, with slightly better food. You can read more books, write more letters, but the world outside still feels impossibly far away. The wardens treat you with a mixture of caution and curiosity. They know who you are now, no longer a prisoner, but a symbol known beyond the seas. You receive occasional newspapers, tightly censored, but you can still read between the lines. You notice hints of unrest across the country, whispers of unions rising, protests growing louder. You can sense it. The system is cracking. You begin to receive visits from government officials. They are polite, careful, speaking in the language of negotiation rather than command. They ask about your conditions, your views, your willingness to talk. You listen, but you do not bend. You have one principle that cannot be negotiated: equality for all, black and white alike. They want peace without justice. You want peace built on justice. So you smile, you shake hands, and you wait. Winnie continues her struggle on the outside. Her name, once spoken with admiration, now carries controversy. The security police harass her, exile her to remote towns, yet she does not stop fighting. You admire her courage even as you feel the distance between you widen. Years of separation, of rumors and pain, have left their mark. Love, like freedom, has its own cost. In the mid-1980s, South Africa burns. The townships rise up. Children throw stones at tanks, and soldiers fire back. The world watches in horror. Western nations impose sanctions. Artists refuse to perform. Corporations pull out investments. Inside your cell, you hear the news in fragments, from guards, from lawyers, from coded letters that pass through the cracks. One day, a guard, younger than most, slides a note beneath your door. It reads only 3 words: "The people march." You sit for hours, staring at those words. You realize that your imprisonment no longer silences you. It amplifies you. You have become the name that can't be erased. In 1985, the government makes its boldest move yet. The president offers you freedom, conditional freedom. You can walk out of prison, they say, if you renounce violence and agree to cooperate. The country listens for your answer. You take days to think. The temptation is real. A walk in the sun, the sound of children, a bed that's not made of concrete. But you know that freedom without dignity is no freedom at all. When your message is broadcast to the world, your voice is calm and firm. What freedom am I being offered, while the organization of the people remains banned? Only free men can negotiate. A prisoner cannot enter into contracts. The words echo like thunder across South Africa. Even the guards who play the tape in secret nod their heads in quiet respect. Not long after, you were moved again, this time to Victor Verster prison, a low-security facility outside Cape Town. You're housed in a small cottage rather than a cell, with a garden, a telephone, and an occasional chance to see family. The world has turned upside down. Now government officials visit you to seek advice. For the first time in 27 years, you walk freely through an open yard. You plant vegetables. You exercise under the sky without a wall blocking your view. At night, you sit by the window and watch the moon rise above the trees. You're older now, your hair white, your hands stiff, but your spirit feels lighter. Secret talks with the government begin in earnest. You meet men who once called you a terrorist, now addressing you as Mr. Mandela. They are cautious but desperate. The economy falters, the streets are restless, and they know the old system cannot survive much longer. You, in turn, show them the power of patience. You don't demand revenge. You propose reconciliation. Outside the world, chants your name again. Free Nelson Mandela. The song plays in clubs, at protests, on radio stations. Your image, once banned, now adorns murals and posters across continents. You are no longer a myth. You are a hope given human form. But freedom still waits. You spend your 71st birthday behind those walls, surrounded by guards who now treat you with a kind of reverence. They bring you tea, ask about your health, and sometimes, hesitantly, about your beliefs. You tell them, softly, that no man is born hating another. They must be taught to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. In early 1990, word begins to spread. Something is happening. You hear footsteps of officials in the corridor, voices whispering your name. Then, on February 11th, the door opens for the last time. The warden looks nervous as he tells you that you are free. You step outside, into blinding sunlight, into air that smells of dust and roses. Cameras flash, a crowd roars, and Winnie waits at your side. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, the world sees your face again. You raise your fist high, not as a gesture of triumph, but of unity. As you walk through that crowd, every second feels like a dream. The sound of children's laughter, the smell of food, the touch of soil under your shoes. Reporters shout questions, people cry, and yet your mind drifts quietly. You think not of victory, but of responsibility. The road to freedom, has only just begun. That night, as you lie in a real bed for the first time in 27 years, you cannot sleep. You listen to the hum of the city, the faint sounds of life outside the window. You are no longer a prisoner, but your country is still trapped in its old divisions. You whisper into the dark. Now the work begins. You begin to move through a world that feels both familiar and strange. The faces, the voices, the rhythm of South Africa are the same, but the air is charged with something new, something restless. Everywhere you go, crowds gather. They cheer, they sing, they cry. Yet beneath the joy lies fear. Fear that the peace might break before it's even born. You settle into a small house in Soweto, surrounded by people who never thought they'd see this day. Strangers call you Tata, father. Children run up to you shouting your name like a blessing. You smile, shake hands, and try to remember each face, but deep inside you know what lies ahead. Freedom is not an event, it is a long, uneven road. Negotiations with the government begin almost immediately. You meet President F.W. de Klerk, a man who had once served the system that locked you away. He surprises you. He is calm, intelligent, and aware that the country cannot survive without change. You, in turn, surprise him by offering not rage, but dialogue. Still, the talks are fragile. Always one step from collapse. The country outside trembles. Violence spreads through the townships. Factions within the anti-apartheid movement clash. Police brutality continues, and thousands die in political fighting. You travel from one community to another, preaching calm. We must build, you tell them, not burn. But not everyone agrees. Many of your old comrades, hardened by years of struggle, accuse you of being too forgiving. They want justice now, revenge now. You understand their anger. You feel it too, buried deep, especially when you see the scars left by the regime. But you've learned something that years in prison carved into your bones. Peace is harder than war, and forgiveness is the only key that truly unlocks the future. Historians still argue whether your calm was a strategy or simply who you were. Some say you mastered your emotions to disarm your enemies. Others say your years of isolation transformed anger into clarity. You never bother correcting them. You simply continue to do what feels right. In 1993, the world recognizes your efforts. You and de Klerk are awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. When you travel to Norway, the air feels thin and crisp, and the applause feels distant, like something happening to someone else. You remember the quarry, the dust, the years of silence, and you realize that the prize is not yours alone. It belongs to those who never saw this day, to the thousands who stood, marched, and died for it. Back home, preparations for the country's first democratic election begin. The tension is unbearable. There are bombings, assassinations, and attempts to derail the peace. Yet, somehow, the process holds. You give speech after speech, your voice steady even as threats fill the air. You tell the people that voting will be the most powerful weapon they ever hold. The day finally arrives, April 27, 1994. You wake before dawn. The streets hum with energy. People line up for kilometers, some walking barefoot, others leaning on canes, waiting under the sun for their turn. You visit one of the polling stations. A woman old enough to be your grandmother stands in line, her hands trembling when she drops her vote into the box. Tears roll down her face. She whispers, "Now I am free." You feel your throat tighten. When it's your turn, you take the ballot in your hand. It feels light, yet impossibly heavy. You mark your choice, fold the paper, and slide it into the box. The sound it makes, a faint rustle, is the sound of centuries turning. Days later, the results come in. The African National Congress wins by a landslide. The world erupts in celebration. You stand on the balcony of the Union buildings in Pretoria, looking out at a sea of faces. Black, white, Indian-colored, all together for the first time. You take the oath of office. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will experience the oppression of one by another. The crowd roars, and you feel tears sting your eyes. You are no longer prisoner 466/64. You are now President Nelson Mandela, the first black leader of a free South Africa. Life in power is different from the dream. The presidential office is filled with paperwork, advisors, and endless meetings. You trade your prison cell for a schedule that leaves no space to breathe. You focus on healing a nation that's broken in ways that laws alone can fix. You create the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, led by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Victims and perpetrators sit together, telling stories that shake the world. Stories of torture, disappearances, and loss. Some weep, some confess, some walk away unrepentant. The nation listens, and slowly, painfully, begins to heal. You reach out to those who once feared you most. You wear the jersey of the national rugby team, the Springboks, long a symbol of white pride, and cheer for them in the World Cup when South Africa wins in 1995. The stadium explodes with unity. One nation, one flag, one future. That moment, more than any speech, begins to melt the walls between races. Yet leadership is never simple. The economy struggles, corruption lurks at the edges of power, and the dream of equality moves slower than you hoped. Critics rise, both inside and outside your circle. Some say you're too patient, others say not patient enough. You accept it all with your usual calm. After climbing a great hill, you say quietly one evening, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb at night. When the cameras fade and the meetings end, you sit alone by the window of your residence in Pretoria. You look out at the city lights and think of the cell that once held you. You think of the friends who never made it here, and you smile softly, because you know, whatever else history may decide, you've brought your people to the threshold of freedom. Years pass and you learn that freedom is not a single moment but a continuous effort. You serve only one term as president, knowing that leadership must be shared and not clung to. Stepping down in 1999 is a strange experience. You have spent decades as a figure of authority, and suddenly the spotlight shifts. Yet, in your heart, you feel relief. Power had always been a tool, not a throne. Outside the official duties, you devote yourself to causes that matter quietly. You work on HIV awareness, encouraging compassion over stigma. You establish the Nelson Mandela Foundation to focus on education, equality, and global human rights. You travel the world, meeting leaders, sharing your story, and reminding others that reconciliation and patience can overcome even the deepest hatred. Historians still debate whether stepping down voluntarily was your greatest act of leadership or simply a necessity. Some argue that no other leader in history would have surrendered power so gracefully. Others believe that your years of struggle shaped a vision of governance rooted in humility. Either way, the act sends a powerful message. Democracy cannot thrive under one person alone. There's a lesser-known anecdote from these years. You once spent an entire afternoon teaching a group of children in a rural village how to read a map. You laughed at their questions, made up silly rhymes for directions, and promised them they would one day see the world. Even as a global icon, you never lost your quiet teacher's heart. Your personal life continues to shift. Winnie remains a part of your journey, though the years have left scars neither of you can erase. You spend time with your grandchildren, listening to their laughter, feeling the simple joy that once seemed out of reach during your long imprisonment. Those moments, quiet and fleeting, remind you that life's richness is found in ordinary connections as much as historic victories. The world outside South Africa watches you closely. You speak about forgiveness and reconciliation, but also about the dangers of inequality and corruption. You emphasize that the fight for justice does not end with the government's fall. It continues in daily lives, in classrooms, in communities that must learn to trust one another again. You attend international summits, meet presidents and prime ministers. Yet you always carry the same humility that guided you in a small village long ago. You are tireless yet calm. You embody the belief that leadership is about lifting others, not towering above them. Even in your later years, you maintain routines shaped by discipline. Early walks, letters to organizations, and moments of quiet reflection. You remain deeply connected to your homeland, the soil, the children, the memory of the hills in Qunu. You speak softly of the past, knowing that the lessons learned there continue to guide the living. One day, sitting in your garden, you watch a group of young people planting trees. You smile, remembering the times you taught prisoners to read, taught villagers to navigate, taught the nation to forgive. Growth, you realize, comes slowly, but it comes. The small saplings will one day tower over the land, just as the seeds of freedom once planted have grown into a living nation. You reflect on the journey, from a boy running barefoot through green fields to a man standing on the balcony of the Union buildings, and now to an elder guiding others with gentle words. The weight of history rests lightly in your hands, because you have carried it with patience, humility, and unwavering faith in people. Historians still debate how much of your greatness lies in your personal endurance versus the movement you led. Some argue that circumstances created you, others insist that you created circumstances. Perhaps the truth is both. Perhaps, in quietly persevering, you showed the world that even the longest chains cannot bind a determined spirit. And so, as the sun sets over the hills, you sit quietly in the garden, listening to the hum of life around you, knowing that every act of kindness, courage, and patience has contributed to something larger than yourself. You have lived fully, fought bravely, and taught the world to hope. Your later years carry a rhythm that blends reflection with gentle activity. You wake with the sun, feeling the cool air on your face, walking slowly through gardens that seem to bloom just for you. Each flower, each birdsong, reminds you that life continues in cycles, and that freedom, once won, must be nurtured daily. You spend time mentoring young leaders and activists, sharing lessons learned in decades of struggle. They listen intently, not only to your words but to the calm authority in your presence. You teach them patience, the quiet power of listening, and the strength found in forgiveness. You show them that leadership is not about domination but about guiding others toward a shared vision. Historians still argue whether your influence in these years was political or symbolic. Some claim that the world no longer needed your direct voice, only your presence as a moral compass. Others insist that you remained a critical strategist behind the scenes. Perhaps both are true. You have always understood that leadership wears many forms. You also find time for moments of personal joy. You walk hand in hand with old friends, laugh at stories of your youth, and share quiet meals with family. You marvel at how technology has changed the world, at how children now hold devices that connect them instantly across oceans. Yet you see in them the same spark of curiosity you once carried, the same yearning for knowledge and justice. One little-known story from this period captures your warmth. During a visit to a rural school, a small child brought you a hand-carved wooden figure. You accepted it with a bow and promised to display it prominently. That figure, simple and unassuming, reminds you daily that even the smallest gestures of respect and admiration carry meaning far beyond their size. You reflect often on forgiveness. Decades earlier, it had seemed almost impossible to offer, but now, looking back, you see that resentment only corrodes the spirit. You emphasize to all who will listen that reconciliation is a deliberate act, one that requires courage greater than that needed for conflict. It is a lesson that stretches from the quarries of Robben Island to the halls of government. The world continues to celebrate you. Statues are erected, streets renamed, awards bestowed, but you remain humble. Recognition is pleasant, yes, but it is not the purpose of life. You measure success by the continued growth of a society that values equality, dignity, and human rights. You focus on substance, not applause. Even as age softens your body, your mind remains alert. You read constantly, follow international events, and write essays encouraging peace and justice. You reach out to those in conflict zones abroad, offering guidance based on your own experiences. You show the world that leadership and moral courage are timeless, that lessons learned in one land can echo across continents. One evening, sitting quietly in your home, you watch the sun dip below the horizon. Shadows stretch across the garden, and the hum of life rises around you. You think of the children who once waved from the streets of Soweto, the friends who never returned from prison, the countless faces you have touched. You feel gratitude, not for fame, but for the chance to live fully, to fight, and to witness change. You understand that life is fleeting, that every moment matters, and that legacy is not measured in statues or speeches, but in the hearts of people who continue what you began. You smile, imagining the next generation, carrying the torch of hope, and you know that your work, though paused in flesh, continues in spirit. Your final years are filled with quiet reflection, travel, and conversations that linger long into the evening. You meet with heads of state, Nobel laureates, and everyday citizens, always speaking softly but with clarity, always reminding them that true leadership is service. You take long walks in your garden, sometimes alone, sometimes with grandchildren at your side, marveling at how small gestures, planting a tree, listening to a child, can carry immense meaning. Even as your health begins to fade, your mind remains alert. You write letters, receive visitors, and comment on national and global issues with the same calm wisdom that has defined your life. You are aware of your mortality, yet you carry a serene acceptance. You know that your story, your struggles, and your victories are now part of the collective memory of South Africa and the world. Historians still debate what the most defining feature of your leadership was. Some argue it was your moral courage. Others insist it was your willingness to forgive. Perhaps it is both, entwined with your enduring belief in the goodness of people. You understand that power is fleeting, but integrity is lasting. There are small, almost forgotten moments that capture your essence. You once spent an afternoon teaching a young boy in a township how to read the stars, pointing out constellations, telling him stories of navigation, of journeys, of hope. He never knew he was sitting with a former prisoner and president. He did not care. The joy of sharing knowledge was reward enough. You often reflect on the extraordinary arc of your life, from the green fields of Qunu, the dusty streets of Johannesburg, the cold cells of Robben Island, to the halls of government and global stages. You have seen it all. You remember the harsh lessons, the heartbreaks, the years of solitude, and yet you carry no bitterness. You choose gratitude, patience, and compassion. Your marriage with Winnie ended long ago, but you maintain a respectful bond. You laugh softly when recalling old stories, remembering both the love and the difficulties, understanding that human relationships, like nations, are complex and imperfect. As the world hails your 85th birthday, leaders and citizens alike send tributes, yet your focus remains simple: education, reconciliation, and nurturing the next generation. You plant trees, you visit schools, you speak softly about equality, reminding all who listen that freedom is not fully won until every child can walk safely, learn freely, and dream without fear. There's a quiet moment, sitting alone at dusk, the sun painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. You hear the distant hum of traffic, the laughter of children, the calls of birds returning home. You think of the long journey, the prison walls, the rallies, the ballots, the victories, and the defeats. and you realize that your life has always been about more than yourself. It has been about the people, the nation, and the enduring promise of hope. And as night falls, you close your eyes, not with regret, but with a deep sense of peace. The journey you began in a small village has reached far beyond anything you imagined. The struggle, the endurance, and the triumphs all converge into this quiet moment, where the world is still, and you are content. Now, as the night deepens and the world outside softens into quiet, you sit back and let your thoughts drift. Imagine the gentle hills of Qunu, the warm sun on your face as a child running barefoot through the fields, the laughter of friends and family carrying over the green grass. Every step of your life, from those simple beginnings to the towering challenges of leadership, has been a journey of patience, courage, and unwavering hope. Picture the stone walls of Robben Island, cold and unforgiving, bathed in the pale light of early morning. You hear the waves crashing on the shore, a distant reminder that life continues beyond any prison. In those moments of silence and isolation, you found clarity, endurance, and an understanding that freedom begins in the heart before it can manifest in the world. Think of the joyous crowds in Pretoria, waving, cheering, celebrating the dawn of a new South Africa. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the touch of hands eager to connect, the voices blending into a chorus of hope. You walk among them not as a conqueror, but as a guide, a symbol of what is possible when patience, forgiveness, and compassion lead the way. As the evening breeze drifts through the windows of your home, let your thoughts settle on the quiet lessons. That forgiveness can be stronger than vengeance, that education plants seeds that blossom for generations, that leadership is service, not power. Imagine planting a tree with small hands beside you, the soil soft, the promise of growth stretching toward the sky. Now dim the lights even further. Perhaps turn on a fan for that soft, soothing background hum. Let your breathing slow. Reflect on a life lived fully, on obstacles faced and overcome, on moments of struggle and triumph. Picture the gentle rising and falling of the world around you, the hum of life continuing softly, persistently, patiently, and finally, whisper a soft thought of gratitude for this journey, for the quiet victories, for the enduring hope that outlasts even the harshest winters. Let that thought carry you gently into calm, into rest, into sleep. You have walked alongside courage, resilience, and love, and now, for a while, you may let the world lull you into its gentle embrace.